how did we get from the discussion that these jerseys were going to be worn 5 weeks ago to
Longer.
3 days before the game, the players being notified they're going to wear them?
Ludicrous.
How did we get to that
And
point?
that's where I believe the next element of this piece will go, in the fact that serious questions need to be asked internally at the Manly Seagulls on why it wasn't explained to the players much earlier than only yesterday.
Or the coach. Or the coach.
Yeah.
Or as I'm led to believe, this goes through certain channels within the NRL. Like at what point did someone not stand up and say, hang on a minute, we need to be very careful here. We need to run this through the playing group. We need to run it by the coach. We need to run it past the Rugby League Players Association. Like this, I'm a little bit dumbfounded that this is a Manly decision and it hasn't become an NRL decision. Like if you're going to take a step like this,
you can't tell me the NRL don't know.
But that's what I'm saying, Paul.
100%.
That's what I'm
Exactly.
saying. And even if you're dealing with something that you know is going to be divisive, a quick Google will tell you this has the potential to blow up in your face. How someone that either at Manly or the NRL didn't stand up and say, we better look at this a little bit more carefully, I can't believe it.
It speaks to the night. Again, I've got mass concern. I think there needs to be huge concerns if I'm a Manly fan about the leadership of my footy club. What decisions are being made on something so significant where only the playing group are learning 24 hours before it becomes public?
And the NRL didn't know? Do you believe that?
No, I don't know. The NRL would have been.
Brave made a really good point too about what this, like the pressure on these young players from their families and what they, they carry this. And so when they go to the game on Thursday night and they have to sit there and they will be in the spotlight and they will have all eyes upon them and the TV cameras will be on them, how do they go home from that feeling?
Yeah.
And what sort of pressure then goes on to their families?
These guys, without naming them individually, like these guys, the Manly club are
on the front page of the paper.
Well, the Manly club are so naive not to have thought that this could be an issue, for the fact that they went through a similar scenario with the anti-vaccination process only 18 months ago.
Yeah, they should have got Ian Roberts in to talk to the players. At the very least, he could have sat there. Look, Ian Roberts is a testament to the game and what he continues to do around the game. It should be admired, as Des spoke to today. And given the opportunity, maybe the players would have changed their mind. They may not have, probably would not have. But the fact is that the fact that it was not managed the way it should have been, the fact that he's been embarrassed by this, he's been let down by this, he's been disappointed by this, it's just no good.
Yeah, I agree. Manly legend Ian Roberts, who was a big supporter of the Pride jersey concept, said while today's outcome was not surprising, it's still extremely disappointing.
I've heard Desi and Daly Terry Evans' apology prior to coming here. I thought the acknowledgement and the sincerity and the authenticity was wonderful. I thought Desi was exceptional in explaining that the original Pride round was brought together with the right intentions and with a celebration for the LGBTIQA+ community. I also would really like to acknowledge that he did the right thing in saying that they got a few things wrong. I will say, even a month ago when I was approached, I was surprised that there wasn't any pushback. I was surprised up until a few days ago that it had taken this long for there to be pushback. I fully respect those players who are choosing not to play and their right not to play with their religious beliefs. I would love, given the opportunity, to be able to sit around a table with those guys and just have a conversation with them, to have an open conversation and to try and explain, what a pride round means, particularly for the LGBTIQA+ community, what it means to us individually.
Yeah, what a legend, Ian Roberts. Admitting that everyone had the right intentions here.
Yeah.
Of course
everyone had the right intentions. He knows that, and I thought he handled it superbly today, considering
always does.
Considering the backlash and what's happened and what's come of it. I thought he was all class.
From it all, for everybody involved.
He was all class.
Yeah, look, Ian Roberts. I was at a function 3-4 weeks ago, Ian Roberts got up and spoke there, and sitting there listening to him and the journey he went through. And I was covering the game when he came out. I remember that. We all knew years before he came out that he was gay. We knew that, and he spoke about the fact that that was something that he needed at the time. And he spoke today about the fact that when he went to Manly made him feel safe enough to come out with that. And that's what a big part of this is. Part of this whole drive about the Pride round or the Pride jersey is to help those people at home who are struggling with their identity, get some confidence and some support, and know that there are other people out there who can help and get them through that period of their life. And that's worthwhile. That's worthwhile. But we are politicising the game to get to that end, and the way the game is ham-fisted dealing with it is embarrassing. And someone from the NRL should actually come out and explain what's going on today, rather than just ducking for cover and saying, all the right platitudes that's in the manual, and actually come out and give some decent answers.
Well, we've got a very important game on Thursday night, and the Manly Sea Eagles need to win it. They're going to have a number of players out. They're playing the Sydney Roosters. Let's have a look at the lineup, and it has changed significantly, obviously, as we can see there. So a number of rookies have come into the team. As we have a look on the screen, Garrick's still there. Secchi will make his debut. Harper Walker, Smalley, Foran. We've still got Daly Cherry Evans there. Paseka, Croker, DeLuey, Bullymore, Davey, Trbojevic. Seguiaro is back in jersey number 14. Kepi, Tapau, Boyle, and Zach Fulton in jersey number 18. So all of that aside, this is an extremely important game for Manly, and they're in some trouble with the squad they've named.
Well, they've had some players who the 7 pulled out, so Des has had to go and speak to other players to fill their spot. And unfortunately for Manly, some of the players he's spoken to have also pulled out.
Yep. So you got more on this too, Dave?
Yeah, look, it was a mad scramble for the Manly Sea Eagles, guys. We all know that the teams on Tuesdays have to be in by 4 o'clock. As of 2:45, 2:30, 2:45, still no team. Still working out on which players they could pick from. You named some names there we haven't heard of, Braith. And P.O. Secchi, 28-year-old Fijian international. Alfred Smalley's a 22-year-old winger, been playing with the Blacktown Workers. Obviously, James Seguiaro hasn't played since 2019. He's been obviously waiting for this opportunity since that anti-doping violation. You can see Andrew Davey and Jake Trbojevic have both been named, so too Lachlan Croker. However, they're still coming through a COVID protocol. We remember they missed last week. I understand Jake's in the all clear. Davey and Croker still haven't had clearance. So we still could see further changes. The big one there, though, guys, is Zach Fulton, the grandson of the great Bob Bozo Fulton. I understand Zach will play. That's my mail.
Geez, that's big, Kenny.
Yeah, well, it is. It's, he's a kid with talent, back row. So look, they've all got talent. If you've got Fulton blood, but look, good on him. But it's unfortunate circumstances in some respects. But there's no doubt he'll go out and do a job.
Do you give him a chance, Crawls?
Look, on paper, it's a formidable team, but they've lost 7 of their best players. Like, that's just a fact. There's no Schuster, there's no Walla Kawatu. Cooler's out. You go through the players that are missing. Josh Alloway. Like, they're not the same side. They're up against the Roosters. They're on 20 competition points. I think there's 4 teams in the fight for that 8th spot. This is a game that they would have penciled in at home on a Thursday night as a must-win.
Well, they're both on 20 points. They're 8th and 9th, both on 20 points.
So what are the ramifications if they go out, lose, and then don't recover after this game?
I'll ask you, put yourself in this situation. If you're in this Manly side and you've got 7 guys that have pulled out and you go out and lose a game like this, does that have the potential to pull your team apart when you turn up next week?
It certainly has the potential to do that. There's no doubt about that. If you go out and lose the game, because they've been on a little bit of a run, they're playing good at the moment, but you can also galvanise the team too. If you handle it the right way, and you can use it as motivation. I mean, some of these
Des will do that for sure.
These players, like I said at the start, they're their teammates. They're their mates. They're going through hell at the moment. Like, people don't understand, but you need to put yourself into these players' positions. You're talking mental health. You're talking these guys all over the media through something they truly believe. I don't believe it, but they do, and they have since they were born. But now they're just all over the papers. They're put through scrutiny. People are scrutinising them. People are calling them homophobes. All of this sort of stuff.
Bigots.
It's
They believe it's strong enough to stand down from a game so important. That's what it means to them.
That's how important it is.
It'll turn the playing group against the club. That's what it
Well,
was.
that's a big issue.
That's what it was.
probably the big issue.
We've
there.
seen that in the past too.
Well, it's happened, and Des is the master at it. He'll say, boys, they've let us down, but we're in this together.
Yeah.
That's 100% what
Well, they threw Des and Daly under the bus today.
100%.
That press
Embarrassing.
conference was embarrassing for them to sit there, and they were
Have to
they were
answer to other
visibly
mistakes.
uncomfortable. Visibly uncomfortable.
They had to answer to others' mistakes. It's so poor. It's rugby league stupidity at its finest, what's happened at Manly.
It will be season defining, guys, because I'm on the other side of it. I think Crawls was heading down that path. I have a fear it could splinter the dressing room. I'll back Des's strength as a coach.
Why do you think that?
Because there's a couple of players in the team that didn't even know what the jersey meant. All they know is football, and they just want to go out and win footy matches. They don't know all this.
But do you mean
other
the players
stuff.
will turn
So
on
their
each
focus
other,
is
or
on,
you-
hang on a sec, we're a chance to play finals footy here,
Okay.
and this is happening in the background. Tell me what's going on. Why are you sitting out?
And
Fair
ultimately, seven blokes this week are sitting in the stands. They're the guys that have been ostracised and excluded. And they will feel, surely.
Is that fair?
It's human nature.
Is that
they're
fair for them to be sitting there?
I don't believe it is. I honestly don't believe it is. I honestly believe this goes beyond Manly. This is like the people at the NRL have known about this situation. So how it's got to this point, I think, is completely unfair on the players. Those players, they've made a choice with a gun pointed at their head. You know, they say they've stood down from the game. Have they stood down, or have they been forced to stand down?
Yeah.
Because their principles and their culture don't agree with what's happening.
Yeah.
Ridiculously, the Manly have just forgotten it's women in league round.
Yeah.
You know?
That's the other. It's taking
Which is
the
what
focus
we
right
should be
away from
celebrating as
that.
well.
Which we would have been celebrating this week.
Yeah.
Which we've always celebrated. But the fact is, it's been hijacked by numbskulls.
Yeah, a number of mistakes. ARL Chairman Peter V'landys has defended the protesting players, saying the situation was poorly handled by the club. However, the chairman says the game stands by its inclusion policy.
Look, I respect the players' choice. You know, they've got religious and cultural differences, and that's the beauty about Australia. We all have those freedoms. But let me say this, though, that one thing I take pride in with rugby league is we treat everyone the same. We're all human beings. Doesn't matter what your colour is, doesn't matter what your sexual orientation is, doesn't matter what your race is. We're all equal. And we'll never, ever take a backward step in having our sport inclusive, but at the same time, we will not disrespect those players' freedoms. And they've got those freedoms, and if they don't wish to play, I respect that. Those players played our games knowing what the NRL stands for. They know that we're inclusive. They know that we don't differentiate between people's colour or their race or their sexual orientation. They know all that. So when they play the game, they've got that knowledge. If they withdraw, that's their right to withdraw. But we're not going to stop the game or do anything different because of their views on that jumper. You know, we'll continue on because that's what we're proud of. That's what we do, and they're well aware of that policy. Look, Manly could have handled it better, no doubt about that. They should have been a lot more collaborative with the players. They should have respected the players. They shouldn't have just sprung it upon them. So, look, I can understand the players' position. I really can. And, you know, they've got those religious and cultural beliefs, and I respect that.
Would you be happy to have an inclusive round next year? Was that something you'd look at?
Absolutely. As I said, you know, we are the greatest game for all, not just for a select few, for all. And if we recognise those people, absolutely. You know, I have no problem with that.
Yeah, Peter V'landys suggests a pride round in the future. I love it, as long as it's done the right way. I think it could be amazing for our game. I believe in it. I think it's a good idea, but Manly have just got it wrong now.
Won't happen, Braith.
It won't.
It won't happen.
Why won't it happen?
Okay, because you have one club, 7 players have pulled out. If you ask 16 players where 50% of the competition is Polynesian now, you are a fair chance of running out basically semi-reserve grade teams in most games. For the same reasons that 7 pulled out of Manly, if you pulled 7 or 8 players out of every NRL club, suddenly you've got 100 players sitting on the sideline in one weekend because they have the same cultural and religious beliefs, because they are from the same parts of the world. So to sit down and try, and Ian Roberts again spoke about that today, spoke about how he's been imploring the NRL for years to come out with an inclusion round. The fact is, he said he was disappointed at the NRL, it's fallen on deaf ears. There's a reason for that, because it just will not happen. Whether you agree with it or not, That is the reality of it. Whether you agree with the politics, that's the reality of what will happen.
There's a bigger issue too. It goes across fan bases too, Paul. At certain clubs, they have people within their clubs, their fan base, that have different religious beliefs, and by politicising this, you're bringing that into rugby league where you don't need it in rugby league. The game is already inclusive. The game has always been inclusive to race, religion, sexuality.
The game led the way. The first Indigenous Australian captain was in rugby league. First openly gay athlete in Australia was in rugby league. And it's still, whether you agree again, it's still a big deal. A soccer player in England comes out and outs himself out of the closet. We get the news back here in Australia. That's how big it's still big worldwide wherever this happens. And that's the reality. An American basketball comes out as gay. We hear about it back here.
There's a reason the 15 other clubs haven't gone there.
Yeah.
Well, there's been I know of two other clubs that have been asked in the past, and they just said politely, you will not get the reaction you think you're going to get. There will be a backlash to this, so they pulled out of it.
Why can't we celebrate the players that want to wear the jersey, and the players that don't can just wear a different jersey?
There's an argument with that.
They're very similar, obviously, but just not with the...
You're right, Braith. And look, under the NRL rules, they all got to run out in the same jersey.
Get rid of those rules for 1 week.
Exactly, and we have seen in the past where Sonny Bill Williams, because of where we all supported his right to refuse to wear the betting logos on his jersey.
Payne Haas.
There you go.
Know why you
Payne
support
Haas.
that?
Joey
Sawali.
Too young for a betting
Sonny
company.
Bill Williams is Sonny Bill Williams. Sonny Bill Williams goes to the Roosters and says, guys, I don't agree with this. You do something to fix it. That's what they did. And the betting company said, no worries, Sonny Bill doesn't have to deal with it. But most players don't have that pulling power. So unless they stand as one.
And Manly don't have the foresight like the Roosters did to go to the NRL.
But these Manly players, they've stood as a group and they've said, we believe in this. Who knows how many originally thought this was their idea, but ultimately they've stood up for their mates.
But to your point too, though, the difference in the Manly jersey, where it's only the white stripes that have been coloured, is subtle.
It is.
And it is subtle enough that if they ran out in the separate jerseys, if you look at that, and if that's just as far as the differences on the field, when you look at the maroon jersey against the red, white and blue jersey this week, you would not spot there would not be like there's 3 jerseys out there on the field. It would still look like there's 2 jerseys. So I got no idea why the NRL just didn't say to the players, you are allowed to go out and you are allowed to just wear the white stripes, which would have extinguished a lot of this conversation.